Well, hey, good morning, Hope Community Church. Oh, okay, we're awake today. All right. It's lovely to be here with you all. And for those of you who are checking us out online, thanks for tuning in. It's great to be here. My name is Nathaniel Lyon, and I'm the lead pastor here at Hope Community Church. If you are just checking us out, one of your first times, that's awesome. And you and I have something in common because I'm new around here too. So we can talk about being new. I'm still figuring out where everything is. I'm still asking people, where's the bathroom again? And so would love to get to say hello. If this is one of your first times around here, make sure you come find me, or I might find you. But today we're starting a new series called Death to Hurry. And I'm very excited about this series. This is something that I feel like God is working in me over time. It's a very slow process. It's very hard. I'm not very good at it. But I think that it's a message that God is trying to teach me and is really pressing on my heart to say this is a message for the church. And it's this idea of hurry. And I'll tell you that I'm still not very good at it, and I'm still learning, and I'm still growing. But the small taste of what I have been able to receive as we learn how to walk at a better pace in this life has brought me more life and joy and hope than I can imagine. So I'm excited to begin this series. It is a message that's very near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to begin today with a story about two pastors. So there's a younger pastor and an older pastor. The older pastor is a mentor to the younger pastor, and one day they're talking on the phone. So you know the story's a little old because who talks on the phone anymore? Who uses their phone like an actual phone, right? I feel like that's one of those words that the dictionary is going to have a different definition for before too long. Well, they're talking on the phone. There's a younger pastor and an older pastor, and they're talking about the challenges of leadership, the burden of leading people, the burden of their schedule. And the younger pastor is talking to his mentor, and he's saying, how do you even do this? I feel like I'm just barely keeping my head above water. There's so many things going on. How do you balance work and family? How do I get all the things done that I need to get done each week and still have time left to give to the people who I care about? How do I get everything on my to-do list done? How do I manage all of these things? It's exhausting. I'm drowning. I'm burning out. What do you do? How do you make this work? I feel like all I can do is run from here to here to here to here to here to here to here, and I finally get home and I just collapse. How do you do it? And there was a pause on the other end of the line. It seemed like this mentor always moved so slow. And he said, hurry is the great spiritual enemy of our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. And the younger pastor gets out his notebook. He's writing on a notepad, so you know it's old because who uses an actual pen and notepad? And so he's writing down, he says, oh, this is good. This is really good. And he starts writing it down, and he says, what else? And his mentor says, there is nothing else. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. See, we live in a culture where we're surrounded by busy and hurry and overload. It seems like every message that we receive is go faster, do more, produce, produce, produce. That's what this world celebrates. And we're all running around as fast as we can, trying to keep it all together, but we all have a million things to do. And isn't it crazy? We all have these aspirations of who we would like to be, the things that we'd like to accomplish, a skill that we'd like to learn. But man, we're just so doggone busy, we don't have time to do any of it. And so this series is based on a book that I read called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is what that story is from. It's a book by John Mark Comer. And when I read it, it really transformed the way that I thought about life. And in the beginning of the book, Comer describes his own story of burnout and hurry and exhaustion. And he tells the story about how he was looking ahead to himself 10 or 15 years down the road. He says, hey, look, if I take my life as it is right now, if I take who I am right now, my schedule as it is right now, and I project, who does this person become 10 to 15 years from now? What does that look like? And this is from his book. This is how he described his life. He said, I see a man who's successful, but by all the wrong metrics. Church size, book sales, speaking invites, social stats, etc. And the new American dream, your own Wikipedia page. In spite of all my talk about Jesus, I see a man who's emotionally unhealthy and spiritually shallow. I'm still in my marriage, but it's duty, not delight. My kids want nothing to do with the church. She was the mistress of choice for Dad, an illicit lover I ran to hide from the pain of my wound. I'm basically who I am today, but older and worse. Stressed out, on edge, quick to snap at the people I love most. Unhappy, preaching a way of life that sounds better than it actually is. Oh, and always in a hurry. Why am I in such a rush to become somebody I don't even like? And I know he's a pastor, and so some of the metrics of success for him are different than what the metrics of success for you might be, but I think there's something in there that resonates with each of us. And I'll tell you, when I was reading this book for the first time and I read that paragraph, it broke me. This idea of who are you becoming? This version of yourself right now, the schedule that you're at right now, the pace that you're at right now, how does that project forward in 10 to 15 years? Who will you be? Will you be successful by all of the wrong metrics? You've got the corner office. You're driving the nicest car. You're managing a bigger team of people. You have the respect from the people around you. But then your marriage is just duty. It's not delight. You're just coasting through, trying to make it happen. You still claim this way of Jesus. You claim to be a follower of Jesus, but all of the peace and hope and life and love that the scriptures promise us, you're not experiencing any of it. But you're telling other people that they need Jesus, even though you haven't experienced the fullness of it yourself. And you're preaching this way of life while wondering on the inside, is this really all that there is? Why are we in such a hurry to become people that we don't even like? But that's the world that we live in. You see, there's this American ethic of celebrating work. We celebrate it. I keep making the joke, I'm a big sports fan, and I watch a lot of ESPN, and on ESPN they're always praising like the star athlete for being the first one in and the last one to leave every day, which is not a bad thing, but I think it's funny we don't even talk about what they do in all that time. We just celebrate the fact that they're working. We don't even talk about what are they doing, what are the important things to work on. We just celebrate that we're working. We work. We do that. We work. And that's what's celebrated. And so we get lost in this cycle where we're working harder to do more and produce more. I think it's interesting in the story that I started with, that the mentor pastor, who I'll tell you is pastor and theologian Dallas Willard, he identified hurry as the great spiritual enemy of our day. Is that what you would have named? If somebody asked you, what's the great spiritual enemy of our day? How many of us would have said hurry for sure is the great spiritual enemy? I think I could have come up with a lot of things. People might look to the loss of an agreed upon universal truth. People just believe in your truth and my truth, and so it's causing this gap where we can't be spiritually deep. Or you might point to the collapse of the traditional family unit. You might point to the secularization of society. You might point to addiction. You might point to any number of things. But how many of us would point to hurry as the great spiritual enemy of our day? But that's what Dallas Willard said. And as you think about it, I think it starts to make sense, because when you get overbusy, overhurried, you get anxious, you get stressed, you stop taking care of yourself. You stop taking care of your soul. You stop taking care of others. And you start making worse and worse and worse and worse decisions because you're not in a healthy place. You see, there was a study done not too long ago at the Charleston Southern University School of Business. Nailed it that time, for those of you who were in the last service. I struggled with that one. Charleston Southern University School of Business, who did a study of 20,000 Christians and tried to identify what are their greatest obstacles of spiritual growth. And I found it so fascinating that their study came up with something that's very adjacent to what we're talking about today. This is directly from their report. This is what they found. It says, it may be the case that for these 20,000 Christians, Christians are assimilating to a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload. Can we all agree that that's the way the world works, at least in the West, at least in America? That's how the world works. There's a culture of busy, hurry, and overload. And we're all buying into it because that's how the world around us works. And I think a generation or two ago, the church looked at all these successful businesses, and we were trying to be relatable, and we were trying to learn from them. And we said, hey, you know what? There's a lot we can learn from these people. And it's true. So the people that lead successful companies are some of the brightest and best that we can learn from in leadership. And there are some things that we should put into practice. There's some things, honestly, that the church needs to put into practice that we can learn from businesses. But I think a side product of that, an unintended consequence, is that we assimilated to a culture of hurry, busy, and overload, even at the church. And I think it happened with the Big C church, but I think it also happened with us as individuals who make up the church. We are assimilating to a culture of busy, hurry, and overload. It's our natural setting. If you run into somebody on the street or in the grocery store, out and about in a restaurant, you run into someone, you say, hey, it's so good to see you. How you doing? Everybody says the same thing. Good. Really busy, but good. I'm really good. Oh, so busy, but it's good things. It's good things. That's our natural setting. We just think that's how it is. We're assimilating to a culture of busy, hurry, and overload, which leads to God becoming more marginalized in Christians' lives. We've all been there, right? When your schedule starts to overwhelm you, when you start to feel like you can't keep your head above water, the first thing that goes is you spend taking care of your soul. Whether it's quiet time reading scripture and in prayer, whether it's a small group that you've been a part of, whether it's a men's breakfast that you go to, whether it's a weekend service like this, the first things that get cut from your schedule when it starts to feel overwhelming is the taking care of your soul. You marginalize God into the side of your life, which leads to a deteriorating relationship with God. We've all been there too, right? We still claim Jesus. We still are followers of Jesus. We still claim this God above all things, but we've marginalized him into the side of our lives, so we're not experiencing him. So our relationship deteriorates, and we get mad at God for not showing up when really it's us that quit showing up months ago. Which leads to Christians becoming even more vulnerable to adopting secular assumptions about how to live. See, we assimilate to this culture of busyness, hurry, and overload, and it starts to drown us, so we push God to the margins of our lives, and then we don't hear from God or experience God in regular moments. And so we start to wonder, God, where are you? What's happening? This whole thing must be bunk. It's trash. It's made up. So I'm going to lean deeper, because this seems to be the only thing that's working for me right now is working hard, because that's where people come to get respect. That's where people come to get money, so I can buy happiness. That's how it works. And we go deeper, which leads to more conformity to a culture of busyness, hurry, and overload, and the cycle begins again. See, church, when we start getting busy and hurried and overloaded and stressed and anxious, we start making worse decisions and stop taking care of ourselves and our souls. And we fall deeper into hurry because we feel like it's the only thing we know how to do. And it pushes God away, and then we blame God for not being present when we're the ones who were not present. Church, that's a big problem. See, I love the way that John Ortberg says it. He says this. He says, for many of us, the great danger is not that we will renounce our faith, It's that when we become so distracted and rushed and preoccupied that we will settle for a mediocre version of it. We will just skim our lives instead of actually living them. You see, I think many of us are so afraid of people walking totally away from God or becoming an atheist, but I think a greater problem in America is people who have settled for a mediocre version of faith and a small version of God. Over the next 4 weeks, as we go into this series, we're going to be looking at 4 practices that we can work into our lives to help us walk at a slower pace in this life. You know, I think it's funny, we often in the church love to use the phrase, my walk with God, as we try to sprint through life. And I think maybe God is calling us back to a steady walking pace that's not built upon sprints, but steady faithfulness each day. So we have these 4 practices in an effort to help us slow down and step out of the culture of busyness, hurry, and overload. So each week we'll take a look at a different one. Here's the 4 of them: silence and solitude, Sabbath, simplicity, and slowing. And each week we'll take a look at a different practice. And they're all S's. Because I'm a pastor, I love that. And I know what some of you guys are thinking already. Nathaniel, I ain't got time to do all that stuff. I don't know what you're thinking. My life is way too crazy to work in any of this stuff. I don't have any time to do any more things. I already know what you're going to tell me. I don't have time for it. And Nathaniel, listen, you don't know what my life is like. That's true. You don't get it. Since coronavirus hit, I'm doing like 3 or 4 people's jobs because so many people got laid off. You don't understand. I don't have time for that. You're right. I don't understand that. Nathaniel, you don't understand. I'm a single mom. I'm raising 2 kids by myself. I don't have time to do that. You're right. I don't understand. Nathaniel, you don't understand. I'm taking care of my elderly parents. They're living with me, and it's a full-time job to make sure that they have the care that they need. I don't have time. You're right. I don't understand what that's like. Each of us has our own story of busy, and so many of us have filled our schedules with really good things. But if you take a relationship with Jesus out of it for just 1 second and think about it like a marriage. Many of you in this room are married, and say you're in a marriage and it's there, but it's not thriving. You're like, man, I really would love to see this relationship come alive again. And your spouse says, me too. Great. And your spouse says, I think what we really need is just like 15 or 20 minutes a day just to be together. Can we just spend 15 or 20 minutes a day together? And then maybe on the weekends, we just go do something together. Maybe it's just an hour where we just go do something together. I really think that could make our marriage come to life. And I know many of you are thinking like, yeah, that makes sense. That's basically kind of bare minimum if you want like a marriage to like happen. Be together 20 minutes a day, do something on the weekends together. And I think many of you would look at your lives right now and say, man, it's so busy. I've got so much stuff going on, but you know what? I need to make my marriage work. So I'm going to start changing my schedule and reorienting it around the things that matter most to me. And if you say, well, I know, but I just don't think I can do that, then maybe you need to face the hard reality that you're just too busy to be married, I guess. That's a hard thing to swallow. But when you think about Jesus in a similar way, it's a relationship that needs nurtured, that needs invested in. And Jesus is just saying, if you want your relationship with me to thrive, can we just have 15 or 20 minutes a day and we do something together on the weekends? That's all we need to start making this relationship come to life. And some of you might say, well, you know what? I would love to make that happen, Nathaniel. I really want to go deeper with Jesus. I really want to spend more time with him, but man, I just don't see how it makes sense. Well, I think 1, I'm about to tell you that I think many of us could clear that time in our schedules. Or 2, no condemnation for me, but maybe you're right. You're just too busy to be a follower of Jesus. And maybe you need to wrestle with that. But can we agree that we need to stop blaming God for not showing up when it's us that is too busy to show up? Can we stop complaining that God is not showing up for us when we're not showing up? And I just have a brief side note about technology really quick, and I have to do this fast because I could do a whole sermon on this, and I would guess, as I'm a pastor of this church, you guys will hear a full sermon on this. But I think we need to talk about technology for everybody who says, I don't have time to do that. In 2019, the data came out that the average adult, and I would argue that the younger you are, the more this is true, it's probably even higher, but the average for all adults in 2019 was 3.5 hours a day we spent on our phones. 3.5 hours a day we spent on our phones. And early data from 2020, because we've all been stuck at home in coronavirus, is that those numbers are way up in 2020. And look, check this out. One of the goals that I've always had for myself is like, man, I just want to be a reader. I want to read more books. Well, I found a study recently that says the average reader, so if you read at an average speed in America, you could read 200 books a year in 417 hours. That's a lot of time. That's over an hour a day of reading. I get it. But when you contrast that with we spend over 700 hours a year on social media, and we spend 2,700 hours a year watching television. That's staggering. So maybe you do have time. It sounds like you have 2,700 hours of time. And look, listen. The social media platforms that we use, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you use. Or if you're somebody who likes to actually watch the media, you watch CNN or Fox News or whatever your broadcaster of choice is. We have shifted in our country to an attention economy. The attention economy is where all the money is right now. It's the biggest business that exists right now. And in an attention economy, what is the commodity is people's attention. Their business model is built around their ability to get you to watch or look or engage. And the first time I heard this, it shook me. I want to say it to you. When every second, minute, hour that you're on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you are the product. You are being sold. You're not the consumer. When you're watching CNN or Fox News, when you're looking at your phone, you're not the consumer. You are the product. Advertisers are buying your attention. That's why it's free. That's why everybody can have a free Facebook account, because what is the business is your attention. It's designed to keep you looking down at your screen for as long as possible. And I think that didn't sit well with me, because when I heard I'm being sold, it made me feel like I'm being tricked. And I didn't like it. And so you can say whatever you want about whatever news station you want, or whoever you follow on Twitter, or whoever you follow on Facebook, and whatever good things they have to say, but the reality of it is that product is designed to keep you looking at it for as long as possible, and that's the goal. And we've given so much of our attention to our screens. And friends, we need to wrestle with this hard fact that what you give your attention to is what's discipling you. What you give your attention to is what is shaping you. And so when you have 700 hours for social media, when you have 2,700 hours for TV, and you don't have 20 minutes to take out of your day to be with the Lord, guess what's shaping you? Guess what's discipling you? Guess what's deciding what your values are? Okay. Some of you are like, okay, Nathaniel, we get it. We're all messed up, broken, horrible people. It's not making us feel bad about ourselves. I'm just as bad at this as anybody. I've tried to do all sorts of things to break this addiction from my phone, and it is a slow trend. It is so hard. And so what do we do? Well, if you've been around Hope for the last month, and you've heard me preach for the last month, I've asked that question in the middle of every one of my sermons, and it always comes back with the same answer, and I'm sorry if you're tired of hearing it, but get used to it. What do we do with our culture of hurry and busyness and overload? Well, I think it comes back to the words of Jesus. Can we read the words of Jesus and live life the way he's calling us to live? Can we look at the life of Jesus and model our lives after the same thing? And I know that sounds easy, and there's this perception of Jesus out there that Jesus is all just about lovey-dovey love, good vibes. And he's definitely about love. But if you read the words of Jesus and you look at the way Jesus lived his life, Jesus was kind of a reckless person who said some crazy things. And if you truly look at the words of Jesus and the life of Jesus and you try to live your life the same way, you will find yourself living a life that is totally different from the people around you. So, today, if we want to escape a culture of hurried busyness and overload, let's look at what Jesus has to say. This is Matthew chapter 11. He says this, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." What a great promise. Does anybody else feel weary or burdened? Just so exhausted. Does anybody else just feel like you can barely keep your head above water with the amount of things on your schedule each week? Is anyone else just so tired that every Sunday night as you're preparing for another week, you look at your calendar for the following week and it's already decided for you before you make any decisions? Is anyone else just so worn out that you feel like all you can do is drag yourself out of bed to clock in at work, just to clock out, just so you can crawl back into bed and watch Netflix until you fall asleep? Where you feel like all you can do is just get by, and you don't have anything left for your family, or for your friends, or to do something productive. We're all so weary and burdened and tired and exhausted. If you look at generation to generation to generation, each generation younger is getting more stressed and more anxious. If you look at Gen Z, anxiety percentages are through the roof, and we're talking about teenagers. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Jesus says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me. This is a really famous passage. If you've been around church at all, you probably have heard this passage before. But as I was thinking about it and preparing for this message, it's kind of a weird thing, right? Like, isn't it kind of a weird gift when somebody's weary and burdened to give them a yoke? An instrument for work? It's a tool to help you plow fields. Jesus is saying, hey, are you tired? Are you worn out? You feel like you can't go on anymore? Here, let me hook you to the plow. Let's go. What a weird thing to give somebody who's tired and worn out and stressed and anxious. Let's hook you to the plow. Let's go. But I think what Jesus was onto is something that maybe we can catch up with, which is this idea that what we need is not an escape or a break or a spa day or a day where we can binge watch the next season of The Mandalorian, but what we need is a different way to live our lives. Jesus is saying is you need something bigger than an escape, where you can barely catch your breath just to get thrown back to the wolves and have your health decline again. What you need is something greater than just a couple weeks off. What you need is bigger than just a cat nap. You see, what I want for you is so much better than this life where you have to work until you can't work anymore just to get 5 minutes of a break just to work until you can't work anymore. He's saying, I want you to live your life in a different way, to work in a different way that does not destroy you. There's a better way to live your life. It's a different kind of yoke. And I think as we've listened to this passage, And you know it. Some of you might be thinking, man, I've been following Jesus for 5 years, for 15 years, for 30 years, for 50 years. And I don't feel that peace, that rest, that joy, that hope. What gives? I'm trying to take on the yoke of Jesus, trying to live my life the way that He's living. I'm trying to love my enemies. I'm trying to learn about being blessed. I give to the church. I serve on Saturdays. But I'm still worn out and exhausted. I think what some of us have tried to do is put on the yoke of Jesus, but we forgot to take our other yoke off. I think there's so many of us who have said, Jesus, I want to live life like you, but I forgot to take the yoke of the burnout society off first. And so we try to pick up loving our enemies and pick up giving, and we try to pick up serving, and we try to pick up understanding what blessed means like, and we try to pick up all of these causes that we think represent a life following Jesus, but then we go back to our jobs and we work 70 hours a week so that we can get the corner office and drive a nicer car than our neighbor to show it off to him. And then we take our family on vacation to Fiji for 3 weeks so we can put it all over Instagram and be the envy of all of our friends. And we want to make sure that our 401ks and our bank accounts are solid. And we want the respect. And we want the praise. And we want the money. And we want the house. And we want the car. And we spend all of our time chasing all of the things that the hurry, busyness, overload culture tells you that you need to be happy. And we try to put Jesus' yoke on over it, and it does not fit. We have to take off the yoke of the burnout society and put on the easy yoke of Jesus. You see, it doesn't work to try to live your life the way that Jesus calls you to live your life and then spend all of your time and energy chasing after what the culture is telling you to chase after. You're wearing 2 yokes. No wonder you're so tired. You're hooked to 2 plows. And I think what we could discover is if we put that down, we change our values, we reorient our schedule around the things that we believe to be most important, we might find that actually what Jesus is offering is better than what this world can offer us. We might discover that there is a way to live and work that is free and easy and light. But it has to start with saying, hey, look, burnout society, I know what you tell me is important. I know what you tell me matters. And I don't think you're right. I want to value different things now. And church, this is going to be hard. And we're going to talk about 4 practices in the next 4 weeks. And they're going to seem really simple, or maybe they won't. But it is challenging. It's going to be hard work. There's no easy fix for this. This is the way that you've lived your whole life. But if you want your life to be different, your life has to be different. I know that sounds silly, but too many times we want God to fit into the cracks of our overbusy schedule and change our whole life. But if you want your life to be different, your life has to be different. It means that you're going to make some decisions that you didn't make before. It means that you're doing things that you didn't do before. It means that you're not doing things that you used to do. For your life to be different, your life has to be different. So we're going to talk about these practices and how we can work them in. And I want to tell you right now, and I'll remind you throughout the whole series, that there is no shame here. This is not about where you think you should be. It's about taking where you are and making steady progress towards Christ. And I'll tell you, just next week, there's going to be 4 exercises in silence and solitude. And you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself because we think on a system of tests and producing and passing the checklist and doing everything right. And you're going to show up and you're going to be like, I only got 2 things done. And you're going to beat yourself up that you didn't get them all 4 done. And I'm going to say, hey, look, that's 2 things that push you closer to Christ that you were not doing last week. So let's celebrate steady progress towards Christ. It's about starting where you are and moving forward. It's not about where you think you should be. It's not about where your neighbor is. It's not about where I am. I'm probably behind you. And so this week, what I really want you to spend some time sitting in is this question. What's the biggest obstacle in the way of eliminating hurry from your life? If you resonated at all with this message that I'm speaking today about hurry and overload and busyness and being exhausted and stressed all the time, where you're quick to snap at the people you love the most, and you know that you need to eliminate hurry from your life, what's the biggest obstacle? Is it your job? You don't know how to slow down? I don't know how to not work 70 hours? Is it that you have young kids, and every time you open up your Bible, a 5-year-old is pushing his cup in your face and saying, hey, can I have some more chocolate milk? Purely hypothetical, totally not based on my real life example. Is it like I said earlier, maybe you do have a family member that you're taking care of, and it takes a lot of work. Maybe it's that you're working 2 jobs and you don't know how to work your schedule out. I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's the technology that we talked about, and you're realizing that you're addicted to your phone, or you can't turn the news off. What's the biggest obstacle in your way from eliminating hurry from your life? And look, many of those things that I just said are good things. Being a dad is very important. And so it's not about, you know what? I'm going to spend all time with Jesus and never with my kids. Like, I don't think that's a solution. But I just want you to identify what's the thing that's getting in the way of you eliminating hurry from your life. And name it before God and say, God, I really want to be with you, but I feel like I can't. And so, God, here's what my life is. How do I spend more time with you in the middle of this? What do I need to do? Let's pray. God, thank you that you are who you are. Creator of the universe, bigger than our minds can even comprehend, and yet, when we speak to you, you listen. And God, not just to us as a group, but God, you see each person individually who's hearing these words, and you know the weight on their souls, and you hear their hearts as they cry out to you. And God, thank you for Jesus, God in the flesh, who came down from heaven to pay everything for us. But God, also for Jesus, who modeled for us what it truly means to be. So God, as we head back into our weeks and we do what we can to pursue Christ, I just pray, Lord, that you would place in front of us how we can draw in closer to you. Help us look at our schedules in a new way, look at our lives in a different way, so that we can see the places that we can just make steady progress towards you. To take off the yoke of the burnout society and put on the yoke of Jesus that is free and easy and light. And God, I pray that as we begin this journey together of walking at a slower pace, that God, the people around us would start to see all over us, man, I feel like you're living your life in a different way. All of us are exhausted and worn down, but it seems like you have so much life. What's that about? And we could say, well, I know this guy, his name's Jesus. And God, we cannot wait to tell the story of what you have done as we reorient our lives around you. God, we praise you and we love you. Amen.